Chainsaw Man ended on March 24th, 2026, only about 2 weeks ago by the time of writing the script. And since then, the fandom has exploded in an uproar of Chainsaw Man fans rioting. Some are saying it's the worst ending in modern shonen, but I figured that I should give my own opinion on it. After all, Chainsaw Man is my favorite manga. So I think I owe it to the series to cover its ending. Did I think there's a worthy ending for the series and for the Warriors? Let's find out. So how did this final arc end? During the final fight between Denji and Yoru, they both find themselves tired and worn out, but while Denji gains the upper hand on Yoru, he gives her blood. Up until this point, Denji's been fighting Yoru for Asa's sake, so he can free her from Yoru's grasp and create a new world with Asa beside him. But the reason for giving Yoru blood was because of a promise Yoru made to Denji many chapters ago. That if he killed the Death Devil, who was Ian at this point already, that she'd have sex with him. And Denji had just recently recalled that meeting. God damn it, Denji. Yoru is quite amused by this and even decides to call a temporary truce. She explains that although she hates Chainsaw Man, she does like Denji. Yoru expresses that she'll fulfill her promise, while also saying Asa consents too. I'm gonna get into how I feel about that scene later, but let me get to the other parts of the ending first. Out of excitement, Denji melts out of his Chainsaw Man form, hugging Yoru, kinda like he does in the first chapter when he meets Makima for the first time. But as he does so, an army of devils swarms into Japan due to the elimination of the Death Devil. Since devils are no longer dying, there's an abundance of them that are now invading. Asa takes control of Yoru's body for a moment, telling Denji to run, because both Denji and Yoru are now very weakened at this point, and Denji's not even in his Chainsaw Man form right now. And then, in a scene meant to call back to chapter 1, Denji pulls on his chest cord before saying, "If you're going to get in our way, then..." Oh. So because death was erased, Denji forgot the last part of his catchphrase, which was, "Die," and from chapter 1. And being confused by not remembering the catchphrase, he is ambushed by the unknown devil. So this just unknown crescent moon looking devil, and just fucking eaten. Like I said my thoughts for later after I finish describing the events of this ending. Chapter 231 opens with Denji holding Pochita in his dog form. Pochita confirms that the two of them have been eaten. Now this is probably the point where you expect them to come up with some plan to free themselves from the devil's gut and save the day. But no, this isn't your average shonen. Denji is bummed that he didn't get to have sex before getting ambushed with the devils. Although Pochita expresses this as a good thing because of Denji's endless ambition. His dreams are constantly overshadowed by the next, and Denji will never truly be happy because of Chainsaw Man. Denji's addicted to being Chainsaw Man to the fame. He's addicted to being the hero of Devil's Fear. As Pochita said, he could only find heaven when he was in hell. He was happier when he had nothing than when he was Chainsaw Man. But Pochita embraces Denji with one last hug before pulling his heart out. Pochita reveals that he's going to eat himself because maybe, just maybe, Denji could keep dreaming and being happier if Chainsaw Man didn't exist. His last words are, "Keep on dreaming, Denji," before he chomps down his own heart, erasing Pochita from existence and rewriting reality. The final chapter opens up with Denji back in the shed he and Pochita lived in the beginning of the series in chapter 1, before Denji became Chainsaw Man, but now without Pochita. Denji still works for the Yakuza and has the same heart disease he originally had before fusing with Pochita, and events go pretty much the same with the Yakuza leading him out to the warehouse for the zombie devil to kill him. However, someone else besides Pochita comes to his rescue this time. Power. Holy shit, I love Power so much. Power gives Denji her blood, making a contract with him to return him to life. As she explains that he smells like a dog, and she likes the smell of dogs. But as Denji is brought back, we see a figure hit Power with a chain, demanding Denji and Power come with them. The Control Devil, but not Makima, Nayuta. Denji and Power are recruited back into public safety, but this time under a Control Devil who didn't really have an agenda like Makima did. Nayuta just seems to not really care that much, so they're just objectively living better than they would have otherwise under Makima's manipulation. While Denji and Power are on a mission, they defeat a devil at school where we see Asa, who was previously playing soccer for classmates and school pet Bucky. The headless chicken devil everyone knows and loves. That Asa fell on top and accidentally killed in the beginning of part 2, which caused her to hate herself and view herself as a monster. To carry a heavy amount of guilt during that part, and Asa accidentally trips as she did in the beginning of part 2, and history is about to repeat itself. But Denji, putting down the chainsaw made from Power's blood, catches Asa, saving Bucky, and saving Asa from the potential future guilt she experienced in the original timeline. Here, we get the now infamous panel on Twitter and TikTok. where Asa says, "Thank you, Chainsaw Man," because he's fighting with Chainsaw. Remember, Chainsaw Man himself does not exist anymore. He was erased from existence. So she wasn't referring to Pochita or like the hero of hell. She was referring to Denji with the chainsaw in his hand. However, we do see a heartbeat within Denji that looks like Pochita, because it's like a Pochita-shaped heart with his face. So we don't know if it's like some figurative shit or if Pochita's actually in Denji's heart still, somehow. The chapter ends with Denji smiling as he watches Asa socialize with her peers. Be truly happy. Although they are now strangers, his love for her carries over into this new timeline. Although they'll probably never see each other again, LMAO. The chapter then ends with Denji and Power walking off to shake off their seniors some money to get some food, and with that, Chainsaw Man comes to an end. I have never seen such a mixed response to an ending. Some people have loved this ending for it being different from other shonen and keeping within the themes and thematically being a sound ending, which I'll explain when I get to my thoughts and analysis. And you got even more people who fucking hate the ending, and I understand both sides. My feelings on the ending are very mixed themselves. These are things I really like about this ending, and then there's things that I mainly get confused by in this ending, and then there's some objectively bad things in this ending. But I want to explain why. But before my thoughts and analysis, as well as my questions, I want to put this out here. No matter your opinions on the series ending, do not attack Tatsuki Fujimoto. Keep seeing these lame-ass posts attacking Fujimoto for the way the series ended. I understand you're upset, but this series didn't end in a satisfying manner for you. But Tatsuki Fujimoto is a human being with his own flaws. Being a mangaka is a very draining job, and Tatsuki Fujimoto has clearly been burnt out. Let's give him some grace. Personally, think it's a large achievement to keep a series going on a weekly basis for so many years. And when I see people who know nothing about manga industry or being a creative, I get a bit annoyed. But let's get into my thoughts and analysis. First, let's talk about the whole sex thing. I was pretty bummed when I realized Denji was being serious here. Because throughout the whole series, Denji has had lustful desires. We know this. But I thought at this point, after Denji's promise to Asa of a new world, that we wouldn't see him be so sidetracked by the idea of sex again. So I was really disappointed at Denji reverting like he did previously in part 2 many times. And I get it, that's the whole point, because of his addiction and everything, and of his personality, he's the type that keeps reverting back to bad habits. And in chasing his dreams, his addiction, Chainsaw Man keeps reverting. All that, right? Which leads to Pushita's decision. That's why Pushita does what he does. But this still just fucking bugs me now. But what really rubs me the wrong way is Yoru's statement. The fact that we only hear Asa's consent from Yoru and not Asa, which is that's just weird to me because Yoru has a history of using Asa's body for actions against her will, like in chapter 167. So I don't really take Yoru as a reliable source for like Asa, like have Asa say this, and like this might have just been a hint that Fujimoto was making that Yoru was just lying, which makes Yoru just even more disgusting as a character, as a villain. But I just also wish Denji didn't just take her word for it. He was kind of just like fucking like once she's like told her to Asa was fine with it, he got excited, but like there's no telling what actually fucking happened. But if you wanted to tell your some truth or not, but either way, I'm not the biggest fan of this whole interaction, and there's a chance Fujimoto didn't even mean to like have this debate. Like he might have just he might have written it to where Yoru just really meant what she said, but they could have written this a better way, man. I do really like the idea of Death's erasure causing a massive devil invasion. It's self-explanatory. If Death no longer existed, then devils would no longer cease to exist, meaning they'd only become bigger in number and would storm the earth like locusts. Locusts. Oh shit. That locust devil was definitely the apocalypse or extinction devil now I think about it, which explains why they were so strong and able to fight both Denji and Yoru. Although the way Denji is taken out of the fight is just way too unbelievable. Really? This is how Denji is defeated? It's funny, but it's just odd. This random devil just eats Denji and causes the end of the series? He didn't even get a name. Is he the Moon Devil? The Dream Devil as it was theorized? We don't know. He's just some fucking random guy. Then we have chapter 231. I actually really like this chapter. Out of the final batch of chapters, this is probably my favorite chapter. Pochita's final moments with Denji leave you feeling very emotional, and you immediately feel the impact. This chapter is a very powerful one, emotionally. And this last scene between Denji and Pochita is just beautiful. Although I do have a big issue. Pochita says that Denji was happier when he had nothing, when he worked for the Yakuza. I was just broke. Well, this is the case. There's some context Pochita doesn't really include. Denji was happy because he had Pochita. If Pochita didn't exist, I doubt Denji would be happy. In the beginning of chapter 232, you see that Denji doesn't really seem that happy at first. Of course, by the end of the chapter, he meets Power, Naita, and Asa again, so he's happier then. But I don't know why Pochita thought that Denji would be happy alone in that shed, and I doubt he knew that Denji would just end up back in public safety, or maybe he did, but I don't think so, because Pochita even says that he didn't know what would happen after he died. And as you've probably heard from other YouTubers and TikTokers, thematically, this was Pochita forcibly removing the addiction from Denji's life. Chainsaw Man is a story of an addict, or at least the second part mainly, and Denji's addiction to Chainsaw Man was too far gone, leading to Pochita taking these drastic measures. Because without the addiction destroying him, he could possibly live a better, more fulfilling life. While that's all great, I do wish Denji had the agency to drop the addiction himself, although in a way he kinda does in chapter 232, more on that soon. Let's talk about Power Naita. I think Power Naita's experiences are proof that while the old world was erased, it still affects characters in the new world. Power has a fondness for Denji's smell, because her and Denji's bond in the past life was so strong that it carries over here. Naita is kind of chill, obviously because Naita, not Makima, but also because Chainsaw Man never existed. We never got the Chainsaw Man obsessed fangirl that we got in part 1. You can assume her life with Denji influenced her personality here, especially with Meowie being fond of Naita. And then the scene with Denji and Asa. Some fans of this chapter and think of it as it completely undermines every other chapter of Chainsaw Man, but I don't think it does. The actions by Denji and others in the old timeline influenced a lot of these new characters, something made even more clear in Denji's final interaction with Asa. When Denji goes to save Asa by catching her, he drops the chainsaw. In that moment, he decides that catching Asa is more important. This is meant to communicate Denji's development to the reader, that he has changed, that he no longer relies on being Chainsaw Man. Of course, that's existing more, but it's bear with me. Denji is his own man, his own devil hunter. He can make a name for his own that is separate from being a Chainsaw Devil. Some people still say that this isn't Denji's development and this is a universal reset, but like I said, the old timeline clearly influences the new one, and thematically it still works. Denji has power to make a chainsaw, and in his heart, Denji was still fond of the chainsaw, so he probably still sees this chainsaw as like this item, similarly to how he did when being Chainsaw Man. Although he doesn't know why, of course. This is made even more clear when Asa calls him Chainsaw Man. Denji's heart beats. Where his heart is, we see that it looks like Pochita's face, so even though Denji doesn't know he yearns to be Chainsaw Man, he probably still yearns to be Chainsaw Man, or what he doesn't know is Chainsaw Man, or he probably yearns for something that he doesn't know what it is, but he knows he yearns for something missing, right? And after the interaction, Denji stands for a couple more seconds before he looks upon the field where Asa and her mates are playing soccer and smiling, seeming to kind of like disregard the whole thing for a second. And let's just address the Pochita-shaped elephant in the room. Is this Pochita? What was this? I think it's one of two things. One, although Pochita is erased devils and Chainsaw Man are rarely completely forgotten. Makima still remembers erased devils long after they were erased. So when the name Chainsaw Man was mentioned, something in Denji's heart that remembered Pochita was triggered. He feels a sort of familiarity with the name. It is very possible that this is all it was, or there could be more. For the second option, let's just say that the first option is still true. But as we've seen with other concepts, they can still be brought back after being erased. Besides, being caught back up by Chainsaw Man. For example, America reinvents nuclear weapons after Chainsaw Man ate the nuclear weapons devil before the series beginning. It is very possible that Asa calling Denji Chainsaw Man, along with the trigger within Denji, might have recreated Chainsaw Man from scratch, maybe like inside Denji. You may be thinking, wouldn't this go against the whole point of this chapter? Maybe. Honestly, I'm not really sure what this was hinting towards, but maybe if you tried it, if there was a part 3 and they wanted to bring Chainsaw Man back, then there's probably a way Fujimoto can make it work, but I really don't know what this was supposed to be. The end of a chapter showing Denji smile and walk off with power, eventually ignoring the random feeling in his chest. I think this is showing Denji finally moving on from Chainsaw Man, the feeling of Chainsaw Man. Now with power, he can actually live a normal life and somewhat be happy. Overall, I liked a lot of the ending. I liked the moment with Asa at the end, Denji and Power being back together, Nayuta's return, Denji be able to return to normal life. I think thematically this ending is very sound, but themes and such cannot replace good execution, and I think that this ending was simply executed a bit sloppily and rushed, obviously. I'd say that that's where most of the hate of this ending comes from. It completely cuts off character arcs like Yoru's, who we're still developing. It only raises more question like, who was the Chainsaw Devil? The chapter blatantly spells out that Pochita can't be the Chainsaw Devil because Chainsaw still exists. Although this is probably just an intentional mystery that was never meant to be explained. Still, we're just left with so many unanswered questions, and this ending just felt like it should have had more time. I also wish we saw other characters in this new timeline like Aki or Himeno, so I hope we do get an extra chapter. So, I think this ending is very flawed, but to be honest, I still like it. I still love Chainsaw Man and Part 2 specifically. I've seen many people talk about how this ending ruins the entire series or this entire part for them, saying that Part 2 as a whole was a mistake, but I don't think it was. I'm glad Part 2 was made. Some of my favorite moments in the story were in Part 2, and I'm forever grateful for the introduction of Asa. Even if we never get a Part 3, I can say I've forever loved the series despite its flaws, even this ending. Finally, I just wanted to thank Fujimoto. Despite how flawed this ending was, I still have the utmost respect for him as creator. I think he's a genius in his craft, and I'll be reading what he makes next. Thank you, Tatsuki Fujimoto. With Chainsaw Man, you created something special, something that will never be replicated. A series that changed the course of Shonen Jump forever. You created a world which captured the attention of many in the hearts of many, including me. I wish nothing but the best for your future works, and I'm just glad I could bring attention to this amazing work through my videos, and hopefully I've convinced some of y'all at home to read and watch the series through my videos.